Welcome to Running Your Stories. I'm here today with Kim Kennedy, who's very kindly offered to come over and chat with me about my attempt at the spine race. So this is going to be about learning, about dealing with not succeeding with the primary, secondary, third, fourth, fifth goals, and sort of how to move on from there. So thanks for coming over, Kim.
Okay.
Hi. So, where do we start?
I suppose I'd like to know a little bit about why you decided to increase, from doing the spine challenger, to doing the full spine. I suppose that's one of the first questions.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And in answering that, I'll explain what each of them is as well, which I've been reminded to tell people about. So it's actually kind of the key element of my own running journey, in that 3 and a bit years ago, I'd been running for about 6 months, doing parkrun, doing probably just about 10-mile runs at the longest. I was getting into running on the trails and just kind of enjoying my running, but didn't really know where it was going. What my sort of long-term aims were. I was getting faster, I was getting fitter, but I think most people do in the first 6 months if you start running regularly. I was enjoying it, which was the main thing. And then I volunteered with Mountain Rescue to stand in a car park at Brun Clough, and handing out cups of tea to people doing this crazy event called the Spine Race. And we were there on the Saturday to see the people coming through on what's called the Challenger event, and there again on the Sunday to see people coming through on the main spine race. And got chatting with a guy called Duncan, who was a mountain rescue volunteer from the Borders team, and who was doing the full spine. And he said, "You don't need to be a good runner to do this. You just need to look after yourself outdoors and keep going." And so, for people that don't know, the spine race is 268 miles on the Pennine Way, which goes from Edale in Derbyshire right up through all the way through Yorkshire, but staying in the hills all the time. Touches into Cumbria, then into Northumberland, and all the way up to Scotland to Kirkheaton. So it's a very tough undertaking in that you carry a heavy pack. There's a lot of kit in your pack. Pack weights within the field range from the lightest at 5 kilograms fully loaded, all the way up to people way above 10 kilograms, 10, 12 and more. Mine was 8, loaded with water. So I was towards the lighter end, but heavy compared to the elites. And so you're carrying a heavy pack, you're in the middle of winter, 2/3 of the day it's dark, and the challenge is to get to the end. Just sounds like fun. And so the Spine Challenger then is the first 108 or 110 miles, because the finish has moved around a little bit in the last few years. And so from that time I got inspired. I wanted to do the full spine. So I didn't tell anybody for quite a while. Started training longer distances, more on trail, or almost exclusively on trail. And then I did the Challenger in 2018, which was a year after I'd been inspired. Did the Challenger in 2019, and so it's always been my ambition for 3 years to do the full spine. But what an undertaking it is. And you know, it's as we get into the story and the reasons why I didn't manage to do the full distance, I think there's some mistakes, some naivety. Primarily, it was my foot went down a hole, twisted my ankle through 90 degrees. That can happen to anyone at any time. It could happen in the first mile or the last mile. I did another 40-ish miles after that. That was going to end the race, really. But one of the things that I'd misunderstood was the transition between running like a 100-mile race, 100, 108, 110, or 105 like I've done on the Lakeland 100, which is really, you control your pace, as long as you eat a bit along the way, and you do it in one go. And it might take you 36 hours, it might take you 30 hours, it might take you 24 hours. If you act bitter, it'll take you 11 and a half hours. But doing 100 miles really with the right training is something you're going to do in one go. Doing 268 miles, it isn't the clock starts, the clock only stops when you get to the end, but it's completely different. It's more like an expedition than a day out. 100 miles I think is an extended day out. It's a day and a half. I know I'm no disrespect to anybody that's taken 60 hours to do this Challenger. They've got a better taste of the full spine than people that are like my last Challenger was 36 hours. You get less of a taste of the full spine by doing it that quick, compared to doing it in 60 hours and getting that experience of being out for a couple of nights and a couple of days and going on and so that was one of the things that I was kind of thinking of it as being an extended Challenger, and it isn't. It's just completely different. It's so that was one of my biggest learning points, and I see it as a massive positive that I've now learned that trying to go over 200 miles is very different to trying to do 100.
Why do you think that is? Because obviously I helped out on the challenge where I obviously went home, but obviously I did track you quite early, and it seemed that you gone off relatively quick, didn't you? You were making a good pace, very good pace.
Yeah, well that's right. And again, I think something that everybody learns when you start doing ultras. I'm talking about ultras, let's say above 50 miles, where it's really different to doing a marathon, not just over the marathon distance. That we all know. You need to set off at a nice, steady, controlled pace. And what we start to learn is that a nice, steady, controlled pace on a training run can still be pretty quick when you're fit and strong. A nice, steady, controlled pace on race day is going to be even faster because you feel good, you're rested, what you really want as your controlled pace isn't just nice, steady, controlled pace, but super relaxed, feels really, really easy. And I don't think I was far above that pace. I think I was relatively on the right kind of pace for me. I've put in a lot of training. But one of the things that made a difference there on the Sunday morning was the weather. Sunday morning the weather was pretty grim. And I find it very difficult to slow myself down in grim weather. Because you're going to get cold, you're going to hang out in the wind and the rain. It doesn't really appeal. So that's again one of the reasons why the pace that I was aiming at was to be steady, not take my heart rate too high, but also to be efficient in that grim weather. You don't want to hang around in that grim weather for a long time, because as you saw people coming in on the Challenger to the checkpoint where you were volunteering, some of those people would have been in a real state. And, and especially later in the pack because they've spent more time in that weather. And that's kind of again, it's been a big part of my running journey, is that when I first set out to do the Challenger, it's a 60-hour cut-off. My initial aim was to do it in 50 odd hours. But as I got fitter and stronger, I re-evaluated to 40 hours. And then it took me 46 the first time, and then it took me 36 the second time. And that meant I was spending less and less time in that grim weather. And it totally changes your experience. So yeah, that's another reason why it's trying to find that balance that I really don't want to hang around. I'm experienced at being out in the weather, especially if I'm doing things like mountain rescue. But the gear I'm wearing for mountain rescue for standing around, I might have 4 4 thick layers on of jackets and 2 layers of trousers at least. That's not what I'm planning to run in. I had the layers with me, expecting that later in the race, as you get really exhausted, you stop producing body heat. And I knew I would probably need that kind of layering system later on in the race. But again, while you can keep moving, you can run a lot lighter and a lot easier. So my pace was quick, but I think it was actually it's reasonably realistic. The only time that I felt I was getting really dragged along was when I came out of checkpoint 1 at Hebden. I'd come out with Gwyn Stokes. We'd been chatting a bit. His friend had dropped out at that point, so we said we'd run together, and we're going to go. We thought, we're going faster than we want to be rather than slower than we want to be. So we might just slow down a bit for this next section in the dark and just try and steady things out. And then, as it happens, we came out and met up with Sabrina, and we all agreed we'd go at this nice steady pace. And we set off, and it was a really nice pace, nice and comfortable. And running as a group, the pace just started to just slightly increase, and I could feel it just slightly increasing to the point where I'm thinking, well, I'd like to stay with a group. It's fun. It's nice. We're having a really nice chat. It's nice being with people when you're running through the middle of the night. At that point, I felt I was contributing quite a lot to the group because I knew that section really well. And it's just faster to navigate when you know it. Yeah. And I was able to shout out, it's this way, it's that way. And we're sort of being then very efficient with the navigation. Then we met up with Simon Feller and another guy, James, who I just saw the name on his pack. I never spoke to him really. And the pace of the group just increased. And so I kind of stuck with them maybe only another 2 miles with this increased pace. And then I let them go because it was going too fast. It was mainly the way my heart rate was going up on the uphills. I thought, oh, that's fine. If they're fit and strong enough to do that, let them do that. So I let them just kind of head off into the night. And then I was on my own for the next section into Lothersdale. And then as I got into Lothersdale, there was a guy who'd, by his own admission, set off a bit too fast. He'd had a bit of a proper rest in the marquee thing at Lothersdale put on by the triathlon club, Keithley and Craven Tri Club put on. Fantastic. And a lot of it organised by Gary Chapman, who's already asking for orders for food because he's going to meet people out in the middle of the moor in the summer. He's offering bacon sandwiches. I don't know what the vegan option is. but yeah, so Simon Roberts, he's called, Welsh guy, was in there, and I didn't stay too long. I went in and got some food. I had to sit down for 5 minutes, and when I was getting ready to leave, I was saying to Simon, well, are you going to come with me? We'll be better off together. And sure enough, he got off a bit quick with the lead pack, and then he was kind of struggling a bit with tiredness running through the night. But we kind of looked after each other, and it was, I wonder if it might have even been just before that I twisted my ankle, or just after that. Because I'm fairly sure I was on my own when I did it. But then, so on the downhills I was slowing down and Simon was kind of looking after me a bit. It's great to know somebody else was around. He was really tired, and we were talking about where we could stop off and have sort of 5-10 minutes sleep or whatever. In the end we made it all the way to Gargrave. It was just after first light we got into Gargrave, and just before we got into Gargrave I then twisted my left knee, which was excruciatingly painful, and I thought it was race over in Gargrave. So we stopped there for a while. Simon wanted a bit of a sleep, like 10 minutes just to get himself going, which did work for him, which is brilliant. But then he was sticking with me, asking me, what I was doing, what my decision was. very, very commendable. And this is what I love about this kind of event, is that yes, we are technically competitors, and maybe in the last few miles. To be honest, actually, if you get to the last few miles together, you finish together. Even third place between Wouter and Simon, they finished together. But it's kind of competitive more against yourself, and you're trying to do what you can do, and between each other, you're helping each other out all the time. And it was really good, and I was really struggling with my left knee.
Can you say what happened to your knee, Kevin? Because obviously we were talking about the grinding beneath, weren't we? And obviously just the stairs, the bogs and the mud at the moment.
So it's just, as you're coming into Malham, you're coming across a section with some fields, and then just before you there's then like a kind of really proper path that leads into Malham. Just before you get onto that, you're contouring round on a hill, and it's just a little trod on the side of a hill, and that trod on the side of the hill was just slick with mud. And now I was probably stepping a bit differently because I twisted my right ankle. I put my left knee down, so in fact it was when my right foot slipped, my left foot stayed where it was, and all the twist went onto my left knee. And I don't ever remember really twisting my left knee that much. I dislocated the cartilage. It was something that level of instant excruciating pain. And so I was trying stretches and things. So the thing was that I wasn't anywhere near any cut-off times. I was way ahead of cut-off times. It was now daylight. The weather wasn't terrible. So as I was saying to Simon, I've got all the gear, I've got loads of food with me. I'm not in any panic to make a decision. And I think this is where a lot of people can get trapped in a race when they hurt themselves, is that you can panic and think, well, that's it, race over, I have to stop right now. And I realised, actually, I don't have to stop right now. I'm in a safe place. I haven't stepped outside of race rules. I haven't asked for any private assistance or anything like that. I could go into Malham Cove, get out my sleeping bag and bivvy bag, and have a 2 hours sleep, and see how it feels after that. So I had lots of options, and so I said to Simon, look, I'm really safe. Please push on, look after your own race. So he did, and so I was trying different methods of walking, trying to find what way might alleviate the pain, because it was like every other step it would be really sharp jarring pain, and I can't explain why, but eventually I decided I'm just going to start walking up Malham steps. And I'd said to Simon, I won't go up the steps with this pain, because at the top it's much harder if I ultimately need to get rescued compared to at the bottom. And I said I won't do that, but then I did. By the time I got to the top of the steps, that pain went and has never come back. So my only guess, and I talked to the doctors on the race about this, is that I could have dislocated the cartilage, and it could have popped back into place by walking up the steps, just putting that constant rhythmic pressure in the right way. And so then it was kind of like, oh, okay, so that's kind of cured itself. I wonder how much further I can go. get up to Montane, checkpoint 1.5, have a chat with the medics, have some food, and take things from there. I knew that other things were, the right ankle was really swollen, not in a good way, but like I say, if I'm safe, I'm happy to just plod on and see what happens. So it was just a case of plodding on, but every time then I came onto a downhill section, the pain in the right ankle and then a different pain developed in the left knee, which might have been related to the twist, but it was a muscular back of the knee, not inside the knee, like the crazy pain was. So the more I did downhills, the worse that got. So after Montane, you're going over Fountains Fell, which I was going up there at a nice pace, Jared Batty of Double Spine fame was on the hill handing out sweets to everybody that came by. Very nice of him, nice cheery face. We had a little bit of a chat, and again, and as Jared will testify, going uphill at that point, sticks out, fast walking pace. I was going strong. I was fine. I was happy. As soon as I crested and started coming down the other side, it was very, very difficult again. And then up over Pen again. And I think I was the last competitor over Pen again before they diverted it because of the winds. So I was nearly blown off my feet a couple of times. I had to angle my body so the wind was not quite 90 degrees to the path. It was kind of just slightly behind. And so I had to angle my body so that the wind was hitting me side on. Because if it hit me like chest width, either back or front, it would knock me off my feet. And so I had to try and keep myself angled so it was hitting side of my body, and use both sticks to keep myself upright. Which for me is a decent size, decent weight kind of bloke was manageable, but smaller, lighter people, they would have probably been crawling or something. So it was a reason, I can't argue with the decision to divert it. I was really happy to go over the top this time because on the Challenger in 2019, I was one of the first people diverted, and I was very disappointed not to go over the top. So I was pleased this time. And then Cave Rescue Organisation, which is the local mountain rescue team, had put on a kind of checkpoint where it's basically a place where the safety team could hang out, but they did it in the local school. And they had soup and cake and all kinds on offer, all for a donation. Now, me not wanting to carry any change, put in a £5 donation and made quite a lot of food. And when I told them I was mountain rescue, I was then told, you can have as much food as you want, and thanks very much for it. So that by this stage, basically, I knew I was without doubt on borrowed time. And so I was just taking every opportunity to look after myself as absolute best I could. Make sure I take some paracetamol there, make sure, eat and drink plenty, check that I've got sort of my kit all ready to go. And that I was wearing my goggles and things like that. The goggles, actually, it's worth mentioning for people that haven't done this kind of crazy race. When you're up high in the hills, it tends to always be side winds for some reason rather than straight on, and the wind blows across the cornea of your eye, and your cornea will, after a period of time, start to swell up, and your vision goes blurry. And I had that on my first Challenger, and it's horrible. You can't see properly. It lasted probably, because it lasts after the race as well. Probably took 12 hours after the race for it to get back to normal. And that was simply, I put my goggles on an hour too late. So something I'm very, very conscious of now. I put my goggles on very earlier than other people do generally, because I'm conscious of that side wind going across your eye, and it's usually always coming from the left and onto your left eye. I know the damage you can do, and it was in the race briefing. One of Exile Medics explained this to everybody at the start, but unless you've experienced it, you might easily underestimate it. Because again, I'd heard about it before the first race. The race is about people being very self-sufficient and knowing how to look after themselves out in the elements. But the race organisers still don't want people to get themselves in a really bad state. And that's what I love about this event. It's a truly difficult, hard event in a really tough environment, but you're looked after kind of at a distance. Someone's always keeping an eye on you. You've got excellent medics around, fantastic volunteers at all the checkpoints, and again volunteers on the safety team. And all these people are there kind of looking out for you if you need them. They're trying to, they're not going to get in your way. But and it's really a great experience. Absolutely fantastic. So from there it's then up onto Calm High Road, and I had a grim experience my first time going up there, and it was looking like similar weather. And then so I met up with another guy at that point, Dave Jackson, and both Simon that I was with earlier and Dave Jackson both finished, which was great.
Yeah.
Dave Jackson was not quite as slow as me on the downhill, but he also had it was his left ankle. He had a bit of a problem with. I think it was a similar tendon issue to what's kind of my ongoing issue, and so fantastically well done for him finishing the race. So we stuck together down into Hawes up Cam High Road, which we had every kind of weather on there, including the fog that you seem to only get on Cam High Road, where there's a section of it that's tarmac. And if you walk in the middle of the road, you can't, in a single track tarmac, you can't see the edges of the tarmac.
Yeah.
When that mist drops, and it's special weather. yeah, and it's the first time I've done that section with somebody else. The twice previous I've done all that section on my own. So it was a great experience to be with somebody, and we were really sharing the navigation, which was excellent. So it just, because every time, even looking at your GPS or whatever, especially when you're trying to use your sticks, it's just that little bit of faff, and it slows you down very slightly. So if you can truly take turns between you, you can actually speed up overall, and that's we worked really well together. It was really quite a pleasure heading into Hawes with Dave. So yeah, and then even through all this kind of slowing down, it was interesting that as I arrived in Hawes, Wouter was just leaving. So he'd had a 2-hour sleep and then had his food and whatever. Well, so I don't know, maybe he'd been in the checkpoint 3 hours. But even after all this kind of injury and slowing down, and I knew I'd taken extra time at more than I really wanted to at Montane and in Horton and on the downhills, I was still only like 3 hours behind Wouter, who ended up finishing third. So it was kind of the interesting thing that my pace at that point still wasn't terrible overall. I was still moving reasonably well, except for the downhills. I really took my time in Hawes then, because I knew my race was over, but I wasn't going to call it in the checkpoint. I wanted to get back out, and so I think I ended up being in there probably the best part of 8 hours. I had 4 hours sleep, which is more than I would have done otherwise. I had loads of food when I arrived, loads of food before I left. Cheese on toast in there was lovely. I heard on somebody else's podcast that they were having vegan cheese on toast, whatever that is. It was apparently really good, but not on the Spine. This is on a way. I think on the was one of the American 200-mile races. So you'll have to have a chat with the Spine checkpoint people and find out what this vegan cheese on toast is and get that organised. But yeah, it's I saw the medics there. Ended up with lots of tape on my legs.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. Yeah,
because actually the pain at the back of my knee, I was thinking it was my IT band because I've had IT band problems in the past, and it's probably only an inch away, the location, the difference in location of the pain, which when you're out in the elements and you're used to having one pain, I'd misplaced where the pain was coming from. I thought it was IT band, so I had IT band taped up, which wouldn't have made the other pain any worse, but there might have been something else could have been done for that. And a lot of tape on and set off again. It was great feeling to go past Hardrow, where the Challenger had finished the last 2 years. That's really good feeling. Go over a Great Shunner Fell for the first time in my life. It was snowing on top of there, ice everywhere, with wind chill probably minus 15. And again, going uphill. Well, coming out of the checkpoint, I could hardly hobble because everything was so swollen. a mile up the road, things were settling down and starting to move. Getting onto the uphill, I started getting going at a decent pace. When I hit the flat and then the downhill, it was just, no, it's not safe anymore. I couldn't move fast enough to stay warm. I'd obviously put extra kit on. So my layering system that I use now, with me being in mountain rescue, I kind of feel I've got to err slightly on the side of caution, and I need to be making sure I'm always safe. I think for me it'd be very embarrassing if I had to get saved due to not looking after myself correctly. So I started the race with a long sleeve base layer t-shirt on, synthetic one because it wicks the sweat best, and my heavy duty Alpkit waterproof jacket. And basically knew I'm putting this on from the start, and it's only a question of hood up or hood down to the finish. The weather was never going to be good enough to take it off. So that's what I started with. In Hebden, I put on another kind of base layer, sort of mid layer t-shirt, and that was actually a mistake. That was part of the reason why I had to drop back from the group, is that I was starting to sweat. I was a little bit too warm. But that's because Gwyn and I had talked about going a bit slower. With hindsight, probably I could have just put a buff on my neck, which makes a big difference. Buff on my neck and maybe a thicker hat, because they were very easy to change on the move, and I could have easily pulled them off and cooled down. Whereas once you put another base layer t-shirt on, the amount of time it takes you to stop and faff and take it off, I've lost the group anyway. So that was kind of interesting. So I had like in hose, I changed the bottom base layer just because I could, because I knew race is over, I might as well have fresh stuff on. The mid layer went back on again, but that also shows the fact that I was completely happy that mid layer was completely dry, which meant the jacket was working, which meant I wasn't sweating too much. Because I had other mid layers I could choose from, but that was my favourite one. I wanted to put it back on. It was totally dry. I actually dried my waterproof socks there because they were only wet on the outside, not on the inside. So I put the same waterproof socks on again, which again shows they were working. So really, some really good kit choices there. That was the what did I say they were? I told you earlier.
Deck-shell socks.
Deck-shell, yes, thanks. Deck-shell waterproof socks. Because there's lots of subtle variation. I've tried all different waterproof socks. Deck-shells are the ones that work for me. And so that was good. One of the things that hadn't worked for me kit-wise was I bought some Innovate waterproof mitts, and I really like them. But I bought 2 pairs of waterproof gloves on top of what I already had before this race. One was a pair of Deck-shell ones because they were going cheap, and I was buying the socks anyway. And I thought, okay, I'll give them a try. And I bought them in an extra large, and they're absolutely massive. They're like, I hardly keep them on my hands, they're so big. And the Innovate mitts, for some reason I got a large rather than an extra large, and they are so small I can only just force them onto my hands. Now the plan had been for those to go on over the top of my windproof gloves, and I think that would have been a really nice combination, because and there's been lots of chat about this with people in the race and volunteers. The issue I was having with the Deck-shell waterproof gloves, my hands were completely dry underneath them, but I've got ice cold water less than a millimetre away from my skin. Now when you have that on your feet, you get used to it with waterproof socks, and what tends to happen is you run in action, pushes the water out, and once you're out of that really wet section, your feet warm up again, and you have another kind of liner pair of socks underneath there. And so while you're in the water, your feet are cold, but once you're out of the water and running again, your feet warm up again. But I found with the hands it doesn't quite work that way. So I think my thinking now is having a thinnish pair of gloves on the hands, something stretchy. I like the Montane windproof gloves. They work well for me. And then having a waterproof mitt that's big enough to go over the top, because then the water's kind of 2 layers away from your skin, not just one. I think that's the best combination. Now, at that point on Great Shin I Fell, I actually had my big mountain gloves, which I'd put in my bag in hose, and a pair of waterproof mitts over the top of those. That's a good combination.
Yeah.
They are huge. But my hands were slowly getting cold with those on, which is why I knew this is end game now, because I can't stay warm enough. But even then, so I had the base layer, mid layer, I had a wrap jacket on, and then the waterproof over the top. In my pack, I still had my Alp kit, I think Heiko or something it's called. It's a synthetic insulated jacket, and so that's kind of always my plan. Whatever extra layer I put on in a checkpoint, I put another layer into my pack, so that I've always got another layer. And then the idea being that if I have to stop, I've got that layer to put on. If I have to really slow down, if I from when I arrived into Thwaite where I dropped out, if I'd had to go on further, I'd have stopped in Thwaite and put the extra jacket on because I had it. As it happens, I got really lucky, and there was a lovely photographer called Harshan who was there taking some great pictures, and the best picture of me in the race was taken by Harshan just as I walked towards him, and he says, "Are you alright?" I says, "No, I need to drop out." And it turns out in Thwaite there's no phone signal, so I couldn't call anybody, and there's a cafe there but it's not open in the winter, so there was nowhere to shelter other than spoke to Harshan and said, "Look, I really need to drop out, this is what's going on." And he could access the cafe's Wi-Fi because he'd been in there in the summer, and so he sent a WhatsApp through to the safety team, let them know I was dropping out and needed picking up, and then let me sit in his car to shelter. And seconds after I sat in his car, the heavens opened and the rain lashed it down. So
so this was a little bit of shelter.
But even sat in his car, I then needed to put the extra jacket on to stay warm, because I'd stopped moving. So that was.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that Val decision then, because I know obviously I'm in contact with you after Val, obviously, and she said to me, you will make a sensible decision, you won't obviously carry on if obviously if you felt it was dangerous, you were going to put yourself at risk.
So I think it's one of the interesting things with ultras compared to other races, because let's say I've been doing like a 10k race or even a marathon. The way I sprained my ankle, the best advice from everybody is get your weight off that ankle as soon as possible. Stop. Now, you hear lots of stories in ultras, and especially if you're going to do over 200 miles, you're going to have some issues that you have to deal with. No one is going to finish that race without being in pain. And so that's what was going through my mind all the time, was looking at making a balanced decision around the safety element was the critical element. And so you can look at safety in the first person and look at myself and say, am I safe? Now, if it's myself and maybe there's only another 5 miles to go, maybe another 2 miles to go, I could decide I'm willing to risk my safety and go for it. Then you can look at safety in the second person, is to okay, if I get that wrong, risk my own safety, which is my own decision, I'm well within my rights to do that. How many people are going to put themselves at risk to come and rescue me? And that's why my points of decision were always prior to going up onto a hill. Basically, I wanted to be confident I could get up and over Great Shun I Fell safely, because I didn't want to have to drag a rescue team out all the way up onto the hill to rescue me, because that puts them at risk. It's one thing me making the decision to put myself at risk, and then there's the third person of, because there was somebody rescued towards the end of the race, a 7-hour call out from North of Tyne Mountain Rescue Team, and that then goes out into the whole community, into family, friends, everybody else, is to how is that reflected on the sport and everything else. I had lots of time to think about this. Between twisting my ankle and pulling out, it was probably 15 hours or more. I had lots of time to think, and so I was going through thinking, really trying to put structure into my thinking as well, which is it's a big part of the mindset thing that I've worked on with Javid, who's been coaching me on this, is thinking about things in a structured way, not making emotional decisions. And that has really, really helped me with, first of all, it's helped me be resilient in the race. And people like Anne-Marie, who's a mutual friend of ours, I was chatting with Anne-Marie at checkpoint 3, where the safety team took me to after I dropped out. And she'll tell you, I wasn't sat there crying my eyes out about disappointment. I sat there having a chat. I could discuss why I'd made the decision, how it was made, already starting to think about what I would do next. How do I start recovering from this? What's the right next steps? Because again, if you end up kind of broken as you pull out of the race, one of the first things you can then do wrong is not start the steps that aid your recovery. And so, I mean, I'm lucky. I have some fantastic friends, and Sinead from Vive Sports Therapy, she messaged me what I should be doing in the car on the way home to start the recovery process. And that's the thing. If you've got that clarity of thinking, you can already start your recovery process in the car. And basically, the idea was to put the seat all the way back and start some very gentle stretching and and movement with no weight on the legs, rather than just sat there. And if you're sat down, your feet are down, all that stuff's going to just swell up more. So yeah, I might have had my feet up on the dash a bit and things like that. Actually, one of the other kid things, which is quite a minor thing, but something else I've learned, is flip-flops. Absolutely brilliant. When your feet are swollen, you can put them on. Although my feet were so swollen, I struggled to put flip-flops on.
Really?
These they're a good size, these flip-flops. But it also means that the checkpoints, you put your dry socks on, and sometimes the floor can be muddy. You can just whack your flip-flops on while you nip to the toilet or whatever.
I noticed that at the first checkpoints myself. Now everybody was straight into flip-flops.
So they're really useful, and they're really useful at the end of the race when your feet are so swollen you don't want to put any shoes on, and you just need to walk from the door to the car and the ground's wet outside. Flip-flops on, brilliant. And it's easier to take them off in the car as well. So the resilience of the mindset was really good. Another thing that relates, I think, as well to this whole attitude of did not fail and the community around the running. I've been reading a book, which I'm still reading, because it's a much longer book than I expected, called The Happy Runner. Have you read that?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
I really recommend it. So it's almost a book about philosophy and psychology based around runners. And it talks a lot about the why do you run, and if you get that right, you're going to have a long and happy sort of running career. And what it kind of, and I haven't read it all yet, so what it seems to be sort of defining as a happy runner is somebody who is really, you're almost kind of like running community focused rather than self focused. And so you're helping each other out all the time, and you get so much satisfaction. Like for me, I was once I dropped out, I was dot watching obviously the elites at the front, but I was also dot watching Simon that I'd been running with to see how's he going to get on. He was struggling through that first night, and he did fantastically. It was so brilliant, and you feel so good for other people. And then I was watching Dave as well. Knowing he had that ankle issue going on. In fact, I think he had an infection in a blister, and the medics put him on antibiotics as well at checkpoint 2. And so that must have been playing havoc with his stomach. And he's just kind of willing people on, and sort of being part of the community like that. It lifts so much pressure off yourself and being self-focused and self-indulgent. It's great, and I think it's the way I've certainly tried to be. Hopefully, do come across as, and therefore I end up surrounded by people like yourself.
It's the ultra running community, so isn't
exactly.
it? That's, I find the difference between that and I suppose the road running is
so you end up in this community where you're surrounded by all these people that are all out to see each other get the best possible results. And so there's obviously a bit of competitiveness, but and there's a bit of banter. But the banter I tend to have about, come on, you could have run faster than that, is only with a very close-knit group of friends where, they understand where it's coming from. They know me well enough that we can have a bit of banter. I don't banter like that with somebody who's like a much slower runner than me, because it would be horrible. And of course, the other person I was dot watching all the way through was Lisa Wilde, who's a lovely person, and she was in the group of the last 3 people who finished.
I know.
And I know how hard she's worked for it, and she's going to come and tell her story.
Yeah, brilliant.
Which
Look
is
forward to
brilliant,
that.
because I chatted with her last year when she DNF'd on the spine, and she was gone and done it this time.
Yeah, amazing.
And I think she's trying to give herself enough time that she might be able to get through the chat without crying too many times. She's very emotional still, but it's just that whole the community's absolutely brilliant. I've had so many people saying they're gutted for me, and I think it's almost hit other people harder than it's hit me. The fact that I didn't make it all the way through the race, and other people have then been telling me about things they feel they've failed at, which has been really interesting, because I've been very open about what's happened with me. I had so many people dot watching me and offering their support to me, and wishing me well, that I one of the ways I'm kind of trying to repay them is to be open about what's happened. Let as many people as possible learn from it, and also show that there's no shame in trying something hard and not getting to the end of it.
But how far did you run, Kevin? Or what sort of miles in the end? Because obviously it'd been your furthest distance, which is still there.
Yeah, I think it was about 120 miles.
Yeah.
The thing I didn't realise till afterwards, because I'd stopped my watch at Hawes so that I had a phone signal. I could upload the data to Strava, which meant that whatever happened with watch battery or anything else, I had that data. Because I've messed up before and not had data, and so I wanted that. And then I started it again, not to try and tell everyone that I hadn't stopped for 8 hours, but because actually I've got the GPX file from the race to send it to you afterwards. So I do have the kind of the full story there. What I didn't realise, because it wasn't all done in one go, was I think I did 198k.
Right, okay.
And if I realised I was just under 200k, I might have just gone a bit further. I might have said to Harshan, are you going to be here in an hour? I'm just going to go a bit further and come back again. Because I was
for the
just...
benefits of Strava.
just for myself, actually. I'm not somebody that gets hung up on the data.
No.
Actually, I love it if I go for a run and I get back and it's like 9.99 miles. Because it winds other people up and it doesn't bother me at all. But just short of 200 kilometres, which is about 120 miles. Which it's a new longest distance for me. Training wise, because again I've been asked by people. Do I think I got my training right before the race? And I would say 95% my training was right. I am going to change a couple of little things with, just knowing what's kind of gone on with my lower legs, kind of make them even stronger. But I'd done a massive training block up for the Lakeland 100 in July. Then I kind of rested from that, got back into training, did Hardwell's 80 in November, and then between those two, between July and November, I upped my strength program in the gym massively, and I really so I just tried to maintain my cardio fitness and add on a lot of strength, knowing that I was going to be running with this heavy pack, and I think that was a really good decision. And I'm pretty sure I worked pretty much as hard as I could, because it's always this balance with running. If you want to gain as much as you can in the time you've got, but if you push it just a little bit too far, you're going to get injured and you're going to knock yourself back a long way. So I'm pretty happy that there's a guy called Simon Courtney at my local gym who's a good runner, and he helps me with
Yeah.
that strength program. So yeah, it's really it's something else I'm doing even more now as I'm kind of planning my comeback.
Yeah.
I'm getting speaking to even more experts and getting more advice. I still always say to people, I make all my own decisions.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm the one doing the work. So yeah, the decisions are mine, but I'm trying to get as much input as I can, learn as much as I can. So yeah, I think strength work's really, really important for something like this. You've got to be strong. And I think one of the ways where it's kind of telling was when I decided to drop off from the group, which had Gwyn Stokes, Simon Feller, Sabrina in it. There's a short tarmac section that we were on, and just on that section it was uphill. And for me to run up there with that pack on is pushing my heart rate higher than I wanted to go. And I don't think it was pushing theirs too high because I think they're stronger. And it's just that subtle difference. If you've got that bit more strength, it just means that bit more gradient, you're not yet raising your heart rate as much. And that's one of the big benefits of the strength and knowing what your kind of peak capability is. It's not that you're expecting to hit that peak in a race like this, but it just keeps that heart rate down while you're going up that intermediate ground. Yeah, once you get on the really steep stuff, you're going to walk. We all do. But that was the thing. I decided I was going to walk that bit when they were running it. And that's why the group sort of went off. And it was quite a long time before I couldn't see the head torches anymore. I wasn't going that much slower than them. But yeah, so I want more strength. is my plan, and just looking at exactly which exercises, how to tweak that. Again, it's about getting the maximum benefit for the amount of stress you put your body under. And so I'm also adding in now, especially while I'm still rehabilitating from the injuries, more swimming than I've been doing lately. And that started off well. That's good. More swim, more spin, take some of the loading off while I'm building back up again. So that was really good. The other thing that really worked, I finished at 120 miles completely full of energy. Everything above my knees felt absolutely great. I was ready to go on a lot further at a decent pace. And so diet wise, and this is the thing I find interesting about this is it's completely independent of whether people can make choices about being vegetarian or vegan or even carnivore, although it's pretty hard not to do this if you're carnivore. Is that I've trained my body to be fat adapted, and that's the aim of my nutrition. Now there's different ways to achieve being fat adapted, and I've not gone full keto. I don't personally see the need. Again, some people do. That's the kind of the extreme end of being fat adapted. But what I found, and then it was kind of good. Only a month or so before the race, I listened to an interview with Zach Bitter, the world record holder over 100 miles, and he very briefly explained what he does. And I thought, well, actually, that's very close to what I do. I might just adjust slightly based on the fact that that's what he does. So he has training blocks where he's fat adapted, and so you can achieve that either through very low carb intake or time restricted eating, fasting, or a combination of the two, which is what I do. So I don't go ultra low on the carbs. I go low on the carbs, but not ultra low, basically because I like fruit. So I'm not cutting the carbs out completely. But I then use the time restricted eating, so maybe it's go for 14 hours. It's like overnight through the morning without eating. Run within that time or exercise within that time means I'm burning body fat. When you're coming up to the race, a day or two before, in my case, I started eating carbs, just normal amount with the family, just what the family's eating. that makes my body carb loaded for the race. Not eating piles of anything silly. And it's one of the reasons why, in my own head, I think it's on balance between lots of different things I've heard, good to still keep eating a bit of carbs. Is that I'll still have it, because one of the main things I've cut out is the grains, because it reduces swelling a lot by cutting them out. But I still have a bit of bread now and again. And I wouldn't be able to define exactly what now and again means. But one of the things that some people get when they go keto and then start eating some of those things, the body can have it reacts like this. I'm not used to having this, and you might not even be able to digest the gluten and things like that. And so just by having a little bit now and again, it keeps my body used to having it. So that meant when I went into the race, basically I could eat absolutely anything and everything. I haven't got any restrictions on this or that. Between the start and checkpoint 1 at Hebden, I reckon I consumed 2,000 calories. I've never eaten that much in that time period before, while running, but I felt like it. And I thought, well, this is going to put me in good stead for later. So I had a good mix of foods. I had a really good bag of nuts with coconut and things in there, which is great. Lots of good fats in there, you see. And I did have some salted peanuts in there, so just getting a bit of salt without going over the top. And then I like the Primal Pantry bars. Have you tried those? Which again, I think they're vegan as well. Actually, they're really good, because it's just it's pretty much the same stuff I've got in my bag of nuts, but in a convenient bar form. So when it's hammering it down with rain, it's a bit easier to get out and shove in your mouth. Some chocolate, and I didn't worry so much about. Usually, I'm only eating dark chocolate, but during the race, doesn't matter so much. And then I did have some chia charge bars as well. And that was kind of like when you're fat adapted, and then you eat carbs, you feel like you're being turbocharged. And so the plan is that if I'm having a low point, I can chomp on something like a chia charge bar, which is a really healthy way of getting the carbs in. And very convenient as well in a bar form.
And the taste really nice. Except for the chia seeds that get stuck in your teeth.
Yeah, but you chomp on that when you're kind of having a bit of a low point. And again, it's like it's like someone's poured some jet fuel in. And it picks me right up, and off I go again. And then I also had some wraps, because I like a bit of sort of proper food as well along the way. And so what I've settled on at the moment, I keep changing what's in there, is basically it's avocado and soft cheese. Soft cheese just helps bind everything together. But the avocado is kind of the main thing. But then I had a little bit of other salad in there, and a bit of chili, because it's a nice flavour.
And wakes you up a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly. And that just tastes so good when you're having that part way through 12 hours between checkpoints, and you've got stuff like that to eat. So that kind of range of stuff, and then I had some other random stuff as well. So for each checkpoint, I had within my drop bag, which I have a big bag with a big lid so I can open it out and kind of see everything laid out. I had within that then like a see-through bag that this is checkpoint 1. So in the checkpoint 1 bag, I had another full set of the same food, again in a clear bag, so I can take that out, reload my running pack. In there I had my my battery pack for charging stuff, head torch battery, and so I used the Petzl Neo head torch, so it's got the removable battery. I've got 2 batteries for that. And then I borrowed a friend's head torch and his battery, so I had 3 batteries overall, which meant I could carry 2 batteries and leave one in my drop bag charging. So every time I got to a checkpoint, I knew there's a full battery there. And then from checkpoint 1 onwards, I started carrying a small charge pack myself. So as the first battery was going flat in the night, rather than waiting and hoping things last, I take that one off the switch head torches, but the one I've taken off I now stick on the charge pack. And again, I can keep an eye on my watch. If my watch battery's going down, I've got that charge pack with me. And again, from checkpoint 1 onwards, I was carrying the charge lead for my watch, so I could charge my watch on the move, or my phone as well. So just a small charge pack, but it just gives me that versatility that if a section's taking longer than I thought, I can do some charging along the way. But then other charge packs in my drop bag, so I can, like I say, I can leave the battery in the drop bag charging, and then there's a fresh one at each in each checkpoint bag, and then at checkpoint 2, I was going to be changing maps, so the maps are in the checkpoint bag. So basically, I pick up that see-through bag, and that see-through bag should be empty. You know, everything from there should go in my pack, or I might decide, okay, I might have gone off a certain bar and don't want to eat that this time. You know, I haven't eaten that, so then that can go in my spare food bag. But that checkpoint bag is empty, so I know I've remembered everything. So all my critical stuff is in that clear bag. And so, you know, some people use checklists, which are great. So I kind of had the checklist in my head going into the checkpoint, but I really like that method of having this see-through plastic bag, and I empty that bag. I know I've done everything, so that worked really well. My clothes were kind of done in a similar way, where there were see-through bags and I put labels on as to what was in the bag, which is actually really useful when you start getting tired and everything's black or everything's pink perhaps, and you kind of look at the see-through bags, but still I've got like 6 see-through bags with black stuff in them, got them a similar size, so I just taped labels on to see what the stuff was, and that was really useful. What I would do a little bit differently on that is I had the checkpoint bag with like a full change of clothes, and what I'm now thinking is that although I could have a bag with a change of clothes, within that have it more of a kind of a rollout with separate bags.
Okay.
And I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that, but that means, because what I ended up doing was when I put on that mid-layer t-shirt at checkpoint 1, I took that out of set of clothes 3. When I changed my socks, I took them out of set of clothes 2. So now I haven't got any full sets. It's kind of like, so it's just, I just kind of need to, I found my clothes getting disorganised. Part of the reason I have everything in separate bags is to make sure everything stays dry when you start putting wet stuff into your bag. So you've taken off some wet socks, I can put them in the plastic bag that the dry socks were in, which keeps them away from everything else, and then everything else is in its own bag as well. So you've got 2 layers of plastic between anything wet and anything dry. Because the last thing you want is to get a checkpoint 4 and have everything inside your drop bag wet. So yeah, I'm kind of learning on that stuff, and I was pretty happy with it. It was a reasonable system, but a few tweaks here and there. But this is where it gets so complicated. I'd say for the Challenger, I mean, you're allowed a big drop bag, so why not? You can just put a spare of everything in there, and just try and have it organised so you can lay your hands straight on things. So probably we've touched on the weather, haven't we? Yeah. I think for me, one of the things, because a lot of people have said to me the weather was absolutely awful on this, and it's always awful on the Spine. Yeah. The week since the Spine, the weather's been fabulous. Yeah. And the week before the Spine, the weather was pretty decent. The week of the Spine, it was pretty dismal. The thing I found a bit different this time compared to 2019 Challenger, I was out for just under 36 hours, and I had 35 hours of bad weather, maybe 35 and a half. This time, although the weather was really bad, there were breaks in it of hours at a time where the weather was actually quite decent. Might have been just windy and not wet. And actually through the Sunday night, the moon was out and the sky was fairly clear, and we could actually see across fields and stuff. It was, we had proper Spine weather, getting blown off your feet, hammering it down with rain, snow, hail, proper Spine weather going on, but there were breaks in it this time, and that was nice. It's nice. You might have remembered having a short break in some weather one night when you and I were running together, and You just got to enjoy those moments when you get that.
Yeah.
And that night was probably, a 5-minute break in the weather. But yeah, this time I had hours and hours of that kind of, the moon's out, the stars are out. The ground was in horrendous condition. But just kind of, look at what you can enjoy out of the situation. Don't get dragged down into the badness of it and sort of lose your mind.
How did you get on with your feet, Kevin? Because obviously when I was at Checkpoint once, some of the states for people's feet were just blisters everywhere. They were bad.
Yeah,
Bad.
my feet were in good shape.
Good.
Yeah. I had one, it seemed like it was a deep blister starting to form on my right big toe. So I got that taped up with hose before it became a blister. Yeah. But that was after, 108 miles or 100. Although it's supposed to be 108, but there was diversions. I think I'd clocked up more like 112 by the time I got into the horse because of the diversions and things. So I had one blister starting to form after 112 miles. I had a toenail that I'd damaged in the Hardwell's 80. Looked like it might be starting to come off, so I got that taped up just to make sure it wasn't going to go anywhere. But no, my feet were in great shape, and that's about practice in the bad weather with the particular shoes, the waterproof socks and the liner socks. The three work together, and if you change one, you've got to re-experiment with the others. And my feet were in fantastic condition because as I got into checkpoint 1, my left toes were a bit wet. You could say they'd been wet for an hour or two, and I dried them. Got into checkpoint 2. Both feet were completely dry. And when I stopped, both feet were completely dry. And that makes a huge difference. The only thing I'm thinking now is this tendon issue that I have coming off the top of my foot onto my shin, is that maybe the liner socks I was wearing are just, maybe it might be a little bit tight around that area. But I'm getting really kind of, it's, when you're getting into that level of detail, you've almost cracked it. It's, but yeah, I've tried all kinds of different socks over the years. I've got all kinds of different socks. And in the end, the liner socks, what seems to make a big difference is almost the roughness of the material. If they're too smooth, they slide too much within the waterproof sock. And again, the different brands of waterproof socks have different kind of roughnesses to them, and again, different models of waterproof socks. And it's how the two socks slide against each other, and then how they slide relative to your shoe. Because when you're going down steep hills with a heavy pack on, your feet are going to slide. And it's the reason, because for a couple of years I've been wearing Injinji toe socks to stop my toes blistering between each other, which is the main place I get blisters. And I've moved away from that because I find on the downhills my toes get more and more jammed into the individual sort of finger toe bits, and that starts to really push on the skin between the toes and starts to really hurt. So it's just nothing's perfect, and it's just experimenting with that compromise all the time. But feet are in great shape.
So which liner socks did you go for in the end?
I went for the 4 pairs for £10 from Sports Direct. Because I bought some just to try them, and they worked.
Just normal socks.
Just running socks. They're just cheap running socks, but they're kind of thin. They're not ridiculously thin, but they're just kind of rough enough that they don't get too much slide going on. I find because I've got some lovely merino wool and whatever else, and I just find they're so smooth. They slide too much against the waterproof sock, which means that my foot's then moving differently inside of the shoe, and it's just just trying to find that balance. So I ended up with some quite cheap socks underneath the waterproof socks, and the other cheap thing, or relatively cheap thing that I like is the leggings, tights, whatever you want to call them, that I was running in. Again, Sports Direct, and by the way, I don't like the shop. But $23.99, windproof panels in the thighs, and they're absolutely brilliant because it's that it just gives you such a range between when it starts getting windy, your legs start getting cold, but you don't yet want to put your waterproof trousers on because you know you're going to be too warm. So if you've got windproof panels on your legs, it's perfect. So yeah, the like Carrymore ones from Sports Direct, $23.99. Rather, now I know that some of the top brands do equivalents of them, and I'm sure the top brand ones fit that bit better and stretch that bit better, but they're like at least £60, if not £80, compared to $23.99. So the thing was, this time I had 3 pairs between what I was wearing and in my drop bag. Whereas if I bought the expensive ones, I'd have had 1 pair. So, you know, having that option that if I do get it wrong and they're soaked, I can switch them from my drop bag when I get to the checkpoint. Yeah. So yeah, the kit is just again, one of the things I did get right thinking about what kit wise was one of the differences between doing 100 miles and doing 268 is you need multiple sets of kit. You know, you can do 100 miles in the same kit all the way through. I did on the Lakeland 100. In fact, all the way through that, the only change I made in my kit was I put on a windproof gilet. That was it, and maybe a buff, something like that. Everything else was just on from the start till the finish. So, you know, over that kind of distance you can, but I think over 268 miles, if something gets wet and starts chafing, you need to change it, because that chafing's going to become a serious issue. I'm generally do very well chafing wise. I did put cream in the right places before I started. It's important. Actually, it's another thing that I should mention to you as well. I was given, and again, I try not to change things too close to a race, but I was given a very, very strong recommendation on some foot cream to use before, during, after racing. It's a German brand. I'll have to find it to show you. It is absolutely brilliant. It's just on another level to anything else I've ever tried. That's another reason why I think my feet are in such good condition. It's one of these ones where you put it on beforehand, and so even if your foot gets wet, it kind of holds the moisture off quite a bit. Not completely, but then it also helps you, because as you know, once your feet dry out, they then get too dry, and it helps with all of that as well. And so it's a before, during, after, 1 tube of cream kind of thing. So that's really good. But yeah, there's all these little details in this crazy race. But the community around it is just amazing. So you'll get to see it even more. I mean, you've seen it a bit volunteering, but I believe you might be doing the flare in the summer.
Yes, I am doing the flare.
Yes, so that's going to be fun. And yes, I have signed up for the Fusion.
You made that decision very early on, though, didn't you? After coming back, someone was messaging you, asking you how you were feeling and what was next.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, one of the things that I think I got a bit wrong with my mindset going into the race was because I'd been wanting to do the spine through a few years of being focused and building up to it. I got it in my head that get this spine done and then take a break from the spine. And so I was going on to sections of the route and I was saying to myself, this is the last time you're going to be on this section. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. And I kept saying to myself, I hate this section. I'm glad I'm not on it again. And it was really quite a negative kind of thing going through my mind that didn't need to be there. And I was kind of found myself fighting the course somewhat because of it. Whereas now I think it's going to be very interesting because I've signed up to the Fusion. Unless something dramatically changes, I'll be signing up to the Spine again next January. So now going on to the Fusion, I'm already thinking everything now I'm going to be on at least twice. Which means I need to look at it differently. I need to go on and enjoy it and run on it and you know, take it for what it is. And I did a lot of thinking as well because I kind of had the choice, and you probably heard my dad asking me about a race across Scotland earlier. So when I was in the mindset of sort of having to drop out of the race, I'd kind of convinced myself that what I was going to do was I was going to go and do an easier 200 miler. And what I had in mind about easier was on the spine you've got the distance, the weight of the pack, the weather conditions, the lack of daylight. It's a lot of things that compound together to make it really, really, really brutal, is the term they use. It is a very brutal event. And I was thinking, well, maybe I should get over that distance, but without some of those other elements. With a lighter pack, if you're more supported, because this is an unsupported event, I could do a supported event where I'm running with very little weight, and I could do a summer event, or the right time of the year where the weather's less of an issue, got more daylight, and so there's all kinds of ways that I could get the distance experience without the brutal nature of the event. But in the end, I kind of had to think to myself, and this is kind of what I was doing while I was dot watching, was thinking about, well, who do I want to be as a runner, and where do I want to end up as a runner? What's next if I go and do that? Because one of the things I've been considering is spending a year doing a Hardmoors Super Slam or something like that, which, and so it's kind of like, well, what do I want to get out of the running? Do I want to challenge myself to in a sort of variety of ways, or do I just want to kind of, because I think doing like a Super Slam would almost be sort of showing off that I can keep rocking up to these races and putting in decent positions, because that's the way to win the Super Slam. You've got to turn up to whatever it is, 5 or 6, 7 races, ultras through the year, and place in a decent place and on them all, and you'll end up winning. And I could do that, but that's kind of the point. I know I can do that. I don't know yet that I can finish the Fusion in the summer. I don't know that I can finish the Spine next January. And that's what I've decided. I want that challenge of working out any unknown elements and pushing myself pushing myself further, being less comfortable.
So will you wait to sign up for the full Spine next year? Will you wait and see how you get on in the summer? Or because I know it sells out really quick, both the challenge and the Spine does, doesn't it?
I don't think the Spine sells out too quick. I'll probably have a word with Scott, because it's the only hesitation, to be honest, is the cost of it. It's a lot of money. That if something happened on the Fusion where I decide that, look, I really have to wait a year or more before I try that distance again, that, I mean, you can get insurance against the cost of it and different things, but I'll probably have a chat with Scott and see if we can work out something sensible. I'd rather not commit the money, which I know is difficult from a race director point of view if he's got other people that are going to commit the money, but I know I want to do it, but it's a lot of money. So I would prefer to just focus on getting through the Fusion, but knowing that the Spine's the end is the thing I'm aiming at, but money wise, it's mainly from a family point of view of, I commit quite a lot of the family's money to my running. So
it's almost like we were saying before, it's all the gear that goes into it as well.
It is, yeah. I mean, hopefully now I've got most of the gear. I mean, before this race, I needed more shoes. I'm always going to need more shoes, but I also needed the GPS, which was really expensive. But that should be pretty much a lifetime thing now. And I needed new sticks, which I got. Actually, that was one of the small little things, because I think you've got they're called Mountain Kings, Mountain King sticks, which are really, really light and got a lot of good things going for them. One of the things that I don't like about those is the handles are kind of sponge. And so those handles get wet. When it stops raining, you're still getting wet hands on the inside of your hands. Whereas I've changed over. They are slightly heavier, some Alp Kit poles, and they're just a more traditional kind of material on the grips. And it was noticeably different for me gripping them and not feeling water oozing into my gloves from the grips on the poles. I think it's something that I'd only be kind of bothered about on winter spine kind of thing. But yeah, that was one of the reasons why, because I haven't completely cracked it with the gloves yet and looking after my hands. At the moment, I mean, I went into the race with 10 pairs of gloves between my pack and the drop bag. That was my way of getting through, looking after my hands, was to make sure I had lots of gloves. I'd like to get it down to being able to do an event like this with maybe 4 pairs and knowing that's enough to go all the way through. That's a lot more backup, but yeah, I haven't quite cracked it with the gloves, but moving away that spongy water into the hands from the sticks has made a difference. But yeah, apparently it's all in my head. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some bad luck with sticking my foot down a hole. It's not a good feeling, that. The hole was as deep as my knee. My knee pretty much touched the edge when my foot went down it. And as it went down, I could feel like that side of the hole just push my foot around and turn it inside. And I was just waiting to hear something pop, snap. And I just got some very sharp pain. Lifted my foot out, shouted a 4-letter word a lot of times.
I imagine.
Yeah. So yeah, but that itself seems to be completely healed now. Less than 2 weeks later. Well, I guess it is 2 weeks since I did it. It would have been this Sunday night, Monday morning sometime. So yeah, that's quite amazing, really. That can heal so fast, but yeah. So, anything else you'd like to ask?
What's next, I suppose? Obviously, I know you're still recovering. Obviously, you've been for your first jog, haven't you, today? Yeah. What's the plan, I suppose, over the next coming months?
Yeah, well, the main thing is to try and do what I term it rehabilitation, being able to run and exercise without any pain. Yeah. That's trying to get to that as soon as possible. And that's about the right amount of rest, the right exercises, stretches, just being careful. I'm swimming rather than running. Trying to sort of minimising the running at the moment, but trying to maintain some fitness. And then after that, it's getting into the strength work and try and build that up. So then probably do something like the Oldham Way as a getting back into things. Local race, 40 miles. I've done it before. That'll be a good way of getting back into it. Probably going to do the Lakeland 3-day event in May. It's kind of like a training camp. It's really good fun. And you've got plenty of option on that of pushing yourself harder or doing an easier route. And it's a good event to really see where you're at. And yeah, I mean, hopefully I'm in peak training by that time. Ready for the fusion in June. So, and yeah, I'll no doubt end up doing a few little bits and pieces of small races with the club and things like that. But that'll be it up to the fusion, and then 5 weeks after that, a Lakeland 100 if I can make it. If not, I'll volunteer and go along and help if I can. I'm sure they're probably inundated with volunteers for that event, but it's a fantastic event. Probably do the Hardwolds 80 again in November, but I thought that was well timed
Yeah, that was good, and you did really well, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a good
that's
race. It's a 6 weeks or something before the spine, so it's enough time to properly recover. It seemed to take me about 2 weeks to recover from that, with it being 80 miles rather than 100. A couple of weeks of recovery, and then still got time for a little bit of training before tapering. That seemed to work well. One of the other things that worked well actually was going into this well caught up on sleep. Because sometimes, I know you've done it the same as me, that you go into a race and because of fitting in all the training and all the normal life around it, you're actually tired before you start the race. And with this being such a crazy event where sleep deprivation is one of the key factors as to how people get on in the race, I went into it as up to date with my sleep as I could be, and that worked.
I suppose that's the good thing about it being so close to Christmas as well, isn't it? Because obviously you've got, I mean, not everybody's off for 2 weeks, but you've got that bit of downtime, haven't you?
Yeah, well,
between Christmas and the week, it's like the 8th, isn't it, the week afterwards?
Yeah, exactly. So it is. There's a lot of negative sides of it being so close to Christmas, but one of the big positives.
Can't eat and drink as you want.
Yeah, it is definitely a big positive that it is a good chance to kind of catch up on sleep and just kind of have a week and a bit back at work. When, I mean, the sort of the biggest part of the taper, or the smallest part, however you look at it, where I don't have to fit in lots of training, and so that week back at work's kind of manageable. Hardly any training at all in that week, which is then easy to fit in, and so not having to do those couple of runs at lunchtime, not having to get up early to run before work. It feels like having to lie in every day, which is exactly what you need. So yeah, that was really good. I'll definitely do that again. Because it keeps the mind a lot sharper, which you need for navigation and things. Because I don't think I made any even minor navigational errors. Not more than like 3 or 4 steps, or saying to somebody, is it this turn? And he said, no, it's not that one. That's it. You might stand still for 20-30 seconds just to check something. Didn't head off on the wrong path at all, which is partly knowing the route, but also partly having your mind sharp and not being totally sleep deprived. So yeah, that was good. So yeah, I think. Anything else?
I don't think so, no.
So yeah, as I say, as we sort of talked about it beforehand, the kind of message I'd like to surround all this with, because it's lots of talking about this event and all the details of it, but really the message that I think should go across to everybody is that you should go out and try what you want to try. Keep yourself safe. Think about it beforehand. You can talk about kind of have a dashboard of things as to what your parameters are about, whether you're pushing things too far, but that's very individual as to how you would define those. But go out and try, take things on. As I say, I've had an overwhelmingly positive response from people saying, you've done brilliant, run further than you ever run before. I do still find it slightly strange when people are saying congratulations to me. I don't quite think it deserves that, but yeah, it's really great that I have had hundreds of messages that are all positive. I don't recall having any negative ones. But I guess the one other thing about that is that because I'm kind of willing to put myself out there a bit and say, this didn't come off exactly how I wanted, and I feel I'm able to deal with that. One of the best things about having the rest of that week off work, not only being able to dot watch, which is great fun, but I had a few friends contact me that have been having a difficult time, and it was fantastic to be able to have the time to invite them round Fortunately, I couldn't go and see them this time because I was unable to drive still by this point. But some friends came round and we had some really nice chats, and hopefully it's helped them even just a little bit. Every bit helps with these things. So it's fantastic. And again, if anybody listens to this and feels I haven't responded to the messages, I've tried to respond to all the messages. Some of the responses I've then got have been quite lengthy ones and involving a number of hours of, I guess paying forward some of the support that people have been given to me. So that it's been fantastic to have the chance to do that, and that was time really well spent. It's this whole kind of happy runner thing. I'm out there doing things. I want to inspire people. And I want to help other people progress, and it's not just with running. It's with everything in life. Running just becomes a great metaphor for everything else. So I've been able to do that through this event. There's one of the local running groups. It's kind of a group within a club. They call themselves the Trailblazers. They planned a run on the Sunday to see people on the spine and said hello to me, cheered me on. They also signed up to the virtual event. They ran each of them some of the longest distance they've ever done in a week during that week, and made a fantastic donation to the mountain rescue team, which that's brilliant. If I'm even a small part of inspiring people to do things like that, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's a great chance, for you feel like you're contributing to the overall community, which is absolutely brilliant. So it's a great community, the trail running ultra community, isn't it?
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
So I think that's the overall message, is that the overall through all this, I say it all is a big positive event. Just gotta get my legs working 100% again and crack on. Well, thanks very much, Kim.
No, thank you.
I hope it's been interesting.
Take a lot away from it. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. The next episode, I'm fingers crossed be able to confidently say, is going to be Lisa Wilde, who was running at the back of the pack all the way through this spine. She's had a 4 or 5 year journey to doing her spine race and succeeding at it. Absolutely brilliant lady, so inspirational. So that hopefully is going to be the next episode. And I wanted to separate out my story from Lisa's story, because I don't want to take anything away from her story, because she deserves all the limelight she can get. So thank you very much.